Good afternoon. I know I was competing with snack time, so it's important. So look, I changed the title on my slide a little bit because saying handled isn't quite true. Is handling is probably more accurate. We're in the process of doing our migration to Java 21. So we'll go with that. Who am I a little bit? My name is Jason Simpson, VP of Engineering here at Choice Hotels. I lead all of our cloud platform engineering, cloud operations, and our Salesforce practice for Choice. I'm ex-GoDaddy, and then I was a former CTO for the state of Arizona for a while. Really, platform engineering at Choice means developer experience. And so we're always on the lookout for new, exciting tools that might be able to kind of make it easier on our developers. And then just like probably many of you, I'm also a vibe coder at this point. So I used to be technical, used to be an engineer, used to write code, didn't for 10 or 15 years, and now I'm probably technically dangerous at this point. So we'll kind of talk about who Choice is, kind of the complexity of the issue, kind of, just kind of our technology landscape. And then I'll talk about our journey to Java 21. Choice Hotels is a company founded in 1939, 86 years in business. We're really at the kind of the cusp of hospitality, franchising, and then technology. We have 22 different brands. Some of them you probably have heard of: Comfort Inn, Sleep Inn, Quality Inn, and then we've recently acquired the Radisson family of brands here in the Americas. So with all that technology, what are we doing it for? It's really for our franchisees. There are 7,500 different Choice Hotels today, all run by franchisees. That means 650,000 rooms in 46 different countries and territories. So we have a little bit of scale that we build our technology for. One of the things we're most proud of, honestly, at Choice is the firsts in the hospitality industry, especially technology firsts. So I know some of these slides are a little hard to read, but in 1983, we were the first hotel company to have a computerized global reservation system. In 2003, we were the first to offer a property management system to our franchisees, all as a SaaS. 2017, probably one of the biggest crowning achievements for Choice is we rebuilt from scratch our central reservation system, 100% running on Java in AWS. We're the first hotel company to ever accomplish that. In fact, many of them try to build it themselves and they fail. And my reasoning behind why I think they actually failed is these guys brought in a bunch of software nerds from GoDaddy to actually complete it for them. So that's probably the reason it worked. And then lastly, we're the first hotel company to be 100% in AWS's cloud, which we did in January of 24. And that really kind of has set the tone for us going forward here. And I'll talk about that, our cloud journey a little bit, because I think it's relevant to the topic of what do you do for modernization. So we started using AWS in 2015. Then we built that global reservation system in 2017. That thing went live. And then we began that cloud journey where we started migrating to the cloud. We shut down our first data center in 2022. And then in 2024, we shut down our last data center in January, in fact. And really that kind of forced us to learn about everything we had because we were moving so many things to the cloud. And a lot of them were super outdated. We had Informix databases. We were running Solaris, just a bunch of ancient garbage. In fact, 331 different applications were retired in that migration. And I think that's important because it was hard. It was a very hard problem, and in fact, I remember telling my teams, hey, we're going to migrate everything to the cloud, and probably 30 to 50% of them were like, yeah, we'll never get that done. That's not going to happen. But it did. I guess that slide has a timer on it. Anyway, we took on some real difficult challenges, and we were able to do it. And so here's kind of, this eye chart here is really kind of the estate of all of the systems that we run today at Choice for our franchisees and guests. And this includes central reservation systems, loyalty systems, data warehouse, property management systems, and many other applications and systems that kind of handle all of those reservations and things. So the total number of apps is around 2,335. that we're including everything there. Okta counts, even though we're not running Okta. Okta is, but everything that we use as an application gets counted. 681 of them being Java applications. We process, and this is a complete guesstimate of how many reservations we handle every year, but it's on the order of about 65 million, and we have about 4,800 repositories. So, once again, kind of goes to the scope of how big Choice is and how big our technology footprint is. And then really for positioning for the future, this is really kind of where do we want to go? Where do we want to take things that we're now fully in the cloud? Because we brought along some legacy tech. Obviously, we're still running Java 8 today, making this migration to 21, but we want to be able to leverage newer technology, do that at a faster pace, get more value out of it. We don't want to be beholden to Amazon and them turning off different versions of software, which they do repeatedly over and over. And we're typically pretty reactive. They're like, hey, we don't want you running MySQL 5 anymore. Well, we should have already been moving along, for instance. So we want to get to that proactivity. We want to modernize our stack and really kind of get to the point where we're having a continuous release cadence with, bake and build. So in order to kind of put ourselves in that thing, one of the big keys is to go ahead and get us on newer versions of Java. And then all the other modules that go along with it. And so upgrading a Java application can be pretty hard. You guys are probably well aware of this. We did make the journey years ago from 6 to 8, and that was only 50 applications, and it took an entire year to get that done. And it was with tons of engineers working on the problem. It wasn't automated or simple. And so if we want to be a technology org that is on the latest and greatest, we have to be able to find a different way to get there. And in order to do that, we enter Modern. And so we bumped into Modern a while ago, and this is from their website. Automate code refactoring and analysis across teams to drive business forward, leave tech debt behind. I'm proud to say that we are making progress in that area, and that's ultimately our goal, is to be on the latest, right? So we want to leverage that all the open source from Open Rewrite, and have the ability to make those changes quickly. Essentially moving to Java 21 from 8. So we're not going to do a bunch of steps in between. We're making the full jump all the way from 8 to 21. And we can do that because of what Modern provides. And we can do it at scale. And this will enable us also to start upgrading everything else, right? So Tomcat versions, Spring frameworks, databases, any other programming languages we're leveraging, we can move them all forward. And so Dove today kind of talked about things not to talk about, typically when you're talking, and we all remember this, right? Anybody a Java developer remembers December of 2021 when the vulnerability for Log4j came out. That hit us really hard, just like it probably hit a lot of you. And I remember being on a call an entire weekend for about 48 hours with about 60 engineers, just trying to understand how bad it was for us. What was the scope of the problem? How many different applications needed to be updated? We had versions that were so old they weren't vulnerable, which was lucky, I guess. But there was a lot of effort just to figure out what we could do, and then it was all hands on deck. So all business stopped, and for 2 to 4 weeks, all we did was deploy Log4j upgrades, right? And so it took a really long time. And what's amazing is with Modern, you can run a script, run a report in Modern, and in 3 minutes you can know where all the stuff is and know exactly, hey, this is the library we have, and here's where it's installed, and here's all the code bases that are leveraging it. And with a couple of recipes, you can make all the PRs to make all those updates. So something that took weeks and weeks and months, and I have peer friends of mine at other companies that took them months and months to solve this problem. Modern can do it in no time, maybe in under a week. So why are we moving to Java 21? I know there's a lot of developers in the crowd here. It's just plain faster. So between Java 8 and Java 21, there was a whole lot of updates there for improving the performance. So we're doing it because of that. Obviously, developer happiness. But as a leader, it's not just to make them happier. It's so that my developers actually want to work at our company because we're using new and modern things. We're not stuck in the old ways. So that's really important to us. And then, of course, all the feature improvements, tons of them, whether it's stuff to do with collections or whether or not it's overall improvements around string methods or text blocks or regex named groups. I mean, there's all kinds of different features and functions that have come along with Java 21. We want to take advantage of those. And even more important, when Java 25 comes out in September, we want to be ready to jump to that, right? So we want to make this now a muscle that we're continuously staying on the latest, and really Modern will help us do that. But to do that, like, there's a whole lot of prep work that goes into play here. In fact, the first thing that we did that was really valuable was worked with Modern directly. We had our distinguished engineer pull down that Java 21 recipe and work through it on some of our code bases. And Modern was super responsive to us because we had questions or concerns or issues, and we would work through those, one by one with the staff from Modern. And it didn't take long before we were actually ready to roll. And so some of the other key things that we did was we set up, made sure all our testing tools and everything were validated for Java 21. The base AMI that we use for Amazon, we had to upgrade that to Java 21. We had to set up all of our build pipelines, all of our automated patching to have this new path, to be able to deploy for 21. One of the key items that really helped, though, was we built a developer's guide for Modern and migrating to Java 21. So we built this developer's guide with help from our distinguished engineer and a couple other engineers on some of our different teams, so that we make it easier for them. And then we brought in Modern for basically a workshop for half a day with a bunch of key engineers all over the company. And they sat in a room and just worked on things with Modern for it was a half day, it might have been a full day, and really got a lot of value. And we started kind of building some internal momentum, because over time we had to socialize our plans with all of the peer teams that, hey, we're moving to Java 21. Here's a nice path forward. Here's a way to do it. Start thinking about it so that we can actually make this occur. And then probably lastly was creating this versioning strategy around not just Java 21, but the ability to be on the latest version, or maybe just the previous one, instead of things that are 4, 5, 8, 10 years old. So we got all that figured out. And then we started. So June of 24 is really when that build and bake for Java 21 on EC2. Most of our stuff runs in Amazon on EC2. And that distinguished engineer of ours was working through the Java 21 upgrade, and he did that mostly in June. And so then in July, we took one application. We have about 15 different groups, application groups, that have these applications that we work on. And we took one engineer and one application from every one of those domains, and we put them through a beta where they would go ahead and use the software and upgrade, and see how it works, and get the whole thing deployed all the way to production. We also, in August, we set up that patching I talked about earlier, set up all of our reporting, and then in earnest, really in August of 24, we started the migration, knowing that we had a whole bunch of deliverables across the organization by the end of the year. So some teams that started working on this, others had to wait. Really by mid-January, everybody was starting their migration, and really the goal was end of Q2 to be fully done. So it was really kind of to set that plan and tone so that everybody knew it was happening. Just to kind of reiterate on the scope here, we have about 15 application groups. We call them domains. They own different functions or applications that the company uses, and that's a total of 681 apps. And this is an actual live copy of our scorecard that we present every Monday morning to the technical executive leadership team to show, hey, here's the progress we're making, guys. Green for some apps means complete in production. Blue is we're actively working on it. That burnt orange is stuff we haven't started. And then, there's things that aren't Java 21 that are on here that don't need to be done. And really it's to set a tone amongst those teams. Hey, who's going to get done first? Or kind of set some competition between the leaders on who's making the progress here. And some of these domains are much, much bigger, as you can tell. They have a lot more applications. That distribution domain is the one that is our central reservation system. It's very complex. They have a bunch of sub-teams, and we have a whole nother slide that shows them competing against each other to get this migration done. So where are we today? As of today, we have about almost 50%. So 48% of our applications have been converted to Java 21, and that means running in production. 22 still in progress. We have about 25% that are not, haven't started yet. And then we have about 5% that are delayed or kind of parking lot, right? And depending on how big your company is, I would imagine you're going to run into these things too. Some of them are technical blockers. AWS, their Elastic Map Reduce, service they provide, it only supports Java 17. So we can't make the jump to 21, so we're going to stop at 17 for that one. Then I have a handful of applications on one of my teams that literally we're retiring them by the end of the year. So there's no point in doing the upgrades for those. So those obviously aren't going to happen. We were 42% last week, and so essentially we've picked up about 6%, which is about 30 apps. And so if you run the burn down, 48%, 30 apps a week, we're not going to make by the end of Q2. We're probably going to be kind of go into July, but really starting hardcore in January to July, 6 months for all the apps, and this wasn't big effort by the developers, right? So we're still developing and building functionality for the business constantly at the same time. So that's what's nice. We're doing these things in parallel. So we're going to be a little more technical here, and this is where maybe I'm going to be a little out of my depth over time, but these are some of the things that Modern has done for us, right? So updating software versions. Obviously, that is kind of one of the key things they provide, and this is so that we have newer versions of Java, Spring Framework, libraries, really helps us with performance and security and so forth. Obviously, they do code refactoring. It cleans it up a lot more. It's much more reorganized, much more efficient, and we can actually have some programming standards versus kind of being all over the board. All kinds of dependency updates, as you can imagine. There's all kinds of external tools and libraries that needed to get upgraded also, because you're going to Java 21. These newer libraries, they need to be upgraded as well. So all of those things had to occur. Tons of different testing improvements, upgrading the frameworks we're leveraging, adding more test cases, kind of more code coverage there. And then lastly, all the annotations and imports. Really, when you're upgrading this amount of code, there's all kinds of things that you want to maintain and update for consistency and be able to leverage new features. So all of those things happened, but there were a few challenges. So let's talk about those. So if you get down in the guts of Java a little bit, they've made some transitions. This Java X to Jakarta transition is really kind of how the namespaces are used in the specifications. And they kind of broke these things apart a little bit. And so because of doing that, there are instances that we needed to leverage to get fixed. And we needed to leverage things like Modern to fix those things. There were some compatibility issues with how some of the dependencies and things work, like for the XML Gregorian calendar component. This Maven Jax B2 plugin, it's used to generate code using the Java X namespace, and it's compatible with the existing JAX-B implementations and specifications. Okay, so it's not compatible with Java 21, so that's a problem. We have another component, this CXF code gen plugin. This plugin is designed to generate Java code from WSDL files, not XSD files. Well, all our stuff's XSD files. So since it's not compatible, we needed a solution for this, and this isn't something that Modern solved for us. Instead, we used large language models. And so in our case, we used a plugin called Klein that you plug into VS Code. And because we're an Amazon shop, we connected to Amazon Bedrock, and ultimately it's using Claude Sonnet 3.7 on the back end to generate all the code. And so what it did was able to look at that and actually come up with different solutions to some of these problems. So that code generation pipeline that was the challenge because of those two components, that one, the code gen plugin that didn't generate WSDLs, and then that Maven one that's not compatible with Java 21. Klein found an alternative way to do that. And so actually a way to still use those XSD files to generate the classes, but be compatible with Java 21. So we pulled in some different plugins and different APIs in order to make that all work. And that was fantastic, Klein helping us there. And then Maven orchestrates our build process and generates Java classes and things like that. And Klein helped us make that better and easier for the transition. So ultimately, like I said, we're kind of to summarize here, we are about 48% of the way done, and there were some real deep technical challenges along the way, but I can't imagine trying to do this with 681 apps. And if you count since August, because August is really when the dev team started, like we're going to get this done in like 11 months, which isn't a year from the old days, but that was 50 apps, everybody dedicated. This is 681 apps, people almost doing it on the side of their desk. So really all in all, fantastic. So we're excited that we've been able to do it, and I think it's going to change the game for choice, where we're now going to be able to continue to adopt new tech all the time, which in this world with AI and everything else, it's going to come faster at us over and over and over. So I have plenty of time for questions. If you guys have any, happy to take them. I don't know if there's microphones. I can repeat the questions. Yes, sir. So I'm gonna read to you what it says on the slide down here, and like I said, when you get into these super technical things, I probably need the engineer here, but the migration from Java X to Jakarta namespaces due to the transfer of Java EE specifications. This migration from Java X to Jakarta is in 21 only affects the Java EE APIs. Transferred to the Eclipse Foundation. Core Java classes like javax.xml, datatype.xml, Gregorian calendar remain part of the Java SE specification and are not included in the migration. And so we bumped into compatibility issues because of that, and we essentially had to refactor code in order to support that. But I probably can't get into a better detail than that. So, yes, sir.
So this was more for the apps to maintain and build in-house, right?
Right, this is for all the apps we maintain and build.
What about Java-related third-party apps, like Elasticsearch or something like that that's out there? You manage that separately?
Great point. So do we manage like some of the applications that are outside of the scope of things we build? Well, it turns out, at least in that particular instance you're talking about, we're using OpenTelemetry, and so we can move those things forward, right? So we can move those third parties forward. But no, it's a great point. Like, so we do run PeopleSoft today. PeopleSoft is running some old Java version. We're not leveraging that. We're not upgrading that version. I don't think you can really do that, right? Move to Java 21 while meanwhile the app isn't expecting that. So no, we're not leveraging. If there's a packaged app that we're leveraging, we're not trying to upgrade it or anything. It's a good question.
Well, WSDL, which I haven't heard for a long time.
Yeah, it's stupid soap.
The SOAP infrastructure, is there like a plan to transition out of SOAP?
Yeah, so the question is there a plan to transition out of SOAP into RESTful? So it turns out, when you're in the hospitality industry, they eventually kind of roll out these standards that just happen over time, right? And today, it's the standard that people still use. Now, we have fully RESTful APIs also for all of our modern partners, but we have partners, so there's at least, in hospitality, we partner with at least 25 online travel agencies. Booking.com, Expedia, all of these players, right? Some of them are pretty modern, and we can use standard, RESTful API calls. In fact, I think we might have Graph set up with one. But some of these older partners, no, it's WSDL. We should be thankful that it's a SOAP interface and it's not files being sent back and forth, because that's what it used to be. So you're absolutely right. Why the hell are we still on SOAP? But it's pretty awesome that we can still move forward with the tech and move to Java 21, even though we're kind of hamstrung by still having these old interfaces. That's a good question. Any others? Yeah, let me get this one, then I'll come back to you.
I was curious about, so you mentioned like improving the existing code base as well, aside from your migration. I'm curious if you could go into more detail on that, like what types of improvements are.
I think it's really a matter of, and I know that they did things that just made the code more readable and everything, instead of it looking like 15 people had coded it. Like, so readability and, we didn't use Modern for this, but you can actually send an LLM, and we've done this in some of our apps, to actually comment the code too, right? And so it's those sorts of things, those sorts of improvements we did to, make it easier for the next go around, right? Instead of it being so hard. But I would imagine we're going to leverage Modern to go from 21 to 25, and it won't be as hard, except that we'll probably bump into this nonsense again. So, question, sir?
Yeah, so I kind of a two-parter. So I was kind of curious, how many developers in total do you have at Choice?
How many developers do we have at Choice? Sure.
And then the second part, like as you were onboarding with Modern, did you provide access for all of them, or like tech leads on each of the teams, or kind of what was your strategy for that?
Yeah, okay, and the other question was, what was the strategy? All right, so the first one is, how many developers do we have at Choice? We have about 500 technologists, and I would say 300-ish are actual software developers in various levels. Within those 15 domains, we basically got a tech lead or two from every one of those, and we definitely provided Modern to them originally. And then we figured out for each team how many, essentially licenses did they need. Now, I forget how many we actually did, but we did not give Modern to 300 engineers. It was a subset. It was more 50 to 100-ish. But, we could, rotate people through that as well and through the training. So did I get both your questions
Yes.
there? Yeah, all right. Yes, sir, in the back.
Other than obviously, what other investments
Oh, geez, that's a great question. It's Dove, right? Yeah, honestly, we should have my platform leader answer that one. I don't have a good answer for you. I can tell you that. Look, I mean, the Log4j, we're considering moving. Oh gosh, there's a different one. We're considering moving away from Log4j altogether, and we used it. We plan on using it for something like that. I don't think I can answer that one really for you though.
Similarly, were there certain recipes that you did use, like, if you're upgrading Java, JUnit 4 to JUnit 5 is something that would be adopted. So do you use was it just, let's get the bare minimum version of Java, but not adopting features?
No, we
Also migrated.
Yeah, it wasn't just to 21. We migrated, and I don't know the recipe names, but we migrated lots of these components also to the latest as well. And it definitely depended on the compatibility and the dependency, right? Because there are some of our components that, they're not going to work unless you upgrade these other subcomponents. And so really there was work to be done to figure out what that plan was. And then as we go forward, like to Java 25 and beyond, we're going to have to do this that same sort of work, and that's really where our, it's not probably the same as your language team that you have, sir, but we definitely do have a group of people that are working on what are our standards going to be as we move kind of through the life cycle going forward, so that we can move, now we're upgrading to the new version of JUnit, or we're moving to a different, logging mechanism. Which version of Modern do we use? We actually stuck with our SaaS. I mean, we're already cloud anyway. To Dove's point from earlier today, their security is top notch. It wasn't a concern for us. We definitely leverage some different SaaS products in our environment. If it's PCI, maybe we'll be a little more cognizant of those challenges. But with Modern, we didn't. It was all. Well, it's 4,800 total. I don't know how many are just Java. It's it's at least 681. It's probably more than that. It didn't take long. Like I said, we had a representative from every one of those domains working on things as early as July of 24, and in August we were working across the whole estate. Questions? Yes, sir.
Do they have any recipes to migrate the soup to
I don't know if they do, but I can tell you that, one, you can write your own recipes, and I know that some companies, if you have your own components and you want to be able to upgrade from component, as the versions move forward, you can write it yourself. I don't know if they would do that or not. Like, that might be just a super difficult problem, right? Because they're kind of the mindset of how you leverage SOAP versus, our RESTful APIs is completely different, but yeah, you need Jonathan. You should ask Jonathan that question. That's probably a great question for Jonathan. But if they do, or whether they do or don't, I will say that using some of the AI models probably can figure a lot of that out for you nowadays too. Yes, sir.
Is there any resistance to adopting this plan or from the various teams, and also any advice on convincing management? I mean, you said you were VPs, so maybe say it goes, but is there any other resistance or any advice on how to get buy-in for that?
Yeah, the question really is around, I'm repeating these because it's being recorded. So the question is really around resistance, both by the developers or by leadership. So when I talked about our cloud migration, us doing that as a company and all of our technologists kind of together doing that meant that we could do these really hard things. And so I think that the resistance level from a leadership perspective has been lowered significantly because we've already accomplished this stuff that's maybe even harder. And so whenever our platform team, in conjunction with some of the key leaders key technical leaders inside of the different domain teams, if some of us come up with an idea, then it usually gets floated around. We have like kind of a high-level architect committee that talks through these things. And it's a matter of getting their buy-in. Our distinguished engineer that I mentioned that kind of really helped with this, like everyone knows, I'm going to say his name. His name's Michael Bennett. And he's fantastic, right? He's super brilliant. And so if Michael really likes something, it doesn't take much convincing to get all the engineers to get it, because Michael's pushing back hard whether or not something's going to be valuable to the team. So, but I do think, you get those key 2 or 3 engineers from the different teams that really kind of set the tone. Like we have a key leader in our digital team for our choicehotels.com. We have key leaders in our distribution team. You get those key engineers bought in, and the rest kind of just come along, and you kind of have that champions effect where they can champion amongst their peers. I will say it is, no one wants to work on this stuff, right? In fact, some of the engineers that are working on this are the level ones, because the seniors it's like, this thing's going to work, and I don't have to do it. Now we can have the level ones do it, which I think in the old days it was like, no, this is a job for the seniors. So, other questions? All right, you hammered me. I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, because I clearly didn't take up all the time. So, all right. Thank you. I appreciate it.